Over the last couple years, there's been a lot of talk about the freedom of speech. There are conversations every day about what constitutes freedom of speech and what constitutes hate speech, which many people believe should be banned. There are also conversations about when freedom of speech is appropriate and who can decide when you can speak freely. These conversations have been going back much longer than I've been alive. There's evidence of talk like this going back to the 1960s during Vietnam and the Civil Rights era, but a lot of the conversation really came to the forefront of everybody's mind during the NFL controversy last year, where Colin Kaepernick decided that he needed to kneel during the national anthem. Conversations about the freedom of speech have been going back much longer than I've been alive. There's a lot of documentation about the topic during the 60s in Vietnam protests and civil rights activities. But a lot of the conversation came to the forefront of everybody's mind, especially about when it is appropriate to freely speak and who can decide that, during the NFL protests last year in which Colin Kaepernick decided that he wanted to kneel for the national anthem. And then another major twist in this story came this past week when ABC canceled its #1 hit show Roseanne after its star put a tweet that was alleged to be racist on Twitter off of business hours. I'd like to take a couple minutes and talk about the controversy that's surrounding ABC currently, because there's a lot of conversation that's going on about the entire situation on both sides, and there are several different facets of it that people are trying to bring up. I want to start the conversation by saying that ABC was well within its rights to cancel the show, just as Ms. Barr was well within her rights to say what she said. The tweet that Roseanne wrote has been made very public and is very well known at this point. Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby equals VJ. This tweet was referring to a former Obama White House staffer named Valerie Jarrett, who is black and was born in Iran. The racial implications came immediately out about this, and that was the reason that ABC cited when they decided to cancel the show. Unfortunately, you can't fire the title character of the show without ending the show itself. This is very unlike the 2.5 Men situation, where Charlie Sheen also said very racist things that ended his career on the show. But the show was not called Charlie, it was called 2.5 Men. With that point on the front of our minds, we do have to remember that there is a precedent for this kind of behavior, and one of the last best known times that this behavior was used was during the Obama administration. Therefore, I wouldn't go as far to say as this is a Trump thing. There's something that fascinates me about the tweet that launched 1,000 ships. The tweet itself is well known, has been advertised on many media outlets and quoted, and has many images on Google Images. I think everybody in the media and everybody in the general public at this point knows what Ms. Barr's tweet says. But it almost looks on the media like this was just something that was randomly put out. I did a little bit of digging into the tweet itself, especially the fact that it said VJ and not Valerie Jarrett, and found that this tweet was actually a part of a longer Twitter thread in which people were discussing the fact that Valerie Jarrett may or may not have been involved in covering up CIA spying on something or other. I've actually dug very hard to try and find the original tweet thread and find what led up to it. And that's been something that's been almost impossible to find. Even a mention of what the topic was discussing was nearly impossible to find, but thanks to the people at the Washington Post for putting it out there for people to see. Now, there are a lot of people out there that are saying that the move by ABC is purely political. This was only done because Ms. Barr is an avid Trump supporter. I don't actually disagree with this premise. I think there were a lot of personal politics that were involved in the decision. I think that's a big part of the reason that the decision came down so quickly and without a lot of thought. However, the difference in the topic is the fact that whether political or not, this was well within ABC's rights to do. The Disney Corporation felt that Miss Barr did not represent them in a way that was positive to them. I don't necessarily personally agree with the business practices that went behind this. This was a very high-rated show, and there's going to be backlash against ABC. There are obviously already boycotts planned of the network, and advertising revenue is going to fall. That's the way that the free market works. And in addition, there are many worse things said on one of ABC's top-rated talk shows, The View, which continues to air and continues to have no repercussions from ABC itself. While it is not provable, there is definitely evidence saying that there is a political bias in which ABC is allowing The View to continue to air, whether or not they say things that offend other people. But ABC itself is a private business. They have the right to interact transactionally with anybody that they care to interact with. This seems to be the point on freedom of expression that a lot of American citizens don't seem to understand. Yes, Miss Barr did have the protected right under the First Amendment to say what it is that she said. I don't believe she should have apologized about it either. It was what she thought. Yes, it had some ramifications and backlash on her career and may have ended it at this point. But she did have the right to say it. However, Disney and ABC corporations also have the right to transmit what it is that they choose to transmit. They have the freedom of the press this way. In addition, all financial transactions in this country should be mutually agreed on by both parties. If ABC chooses not to have a financial relationship with Miss Barr anymore, they are well within their rights to do so. And there are some other things that could come off the top of this if things play out the way that they do. And one final small topic that I want to take a second and touch on as we're talking about employment, employees, and financial transactions does involve the kneeling controversy with the NFL. In both cases, Miss Barr and the NFL players were all employees of their subsequent parent companies, Barr and Disney, and the NFL players and the NFL. Now, all parties involved do have the right to freely express their opinions in any way they choose to. However, their employers expect a certain level of respect and abiding by the rules out of all of their employees. When you are an employee of somebody, you are a representative of that company. That includes NFL players and TV stars. Therefore, you should at least take some time, and even if you don't believe in the same views as your employer, you should take some time and try to positively represent your company in any way that you can. I was having a conversation about this phenomenon with another person in which I likened the idea to a cashier who is a Jehovah's Witness. I asked my friend this very simple question. If you had a cashier who was a Jehovah's Witness, how would you feel if that person tried to push a watchtower on everybody that came through his line? Now keep in mind that I don't believe that you are a Jehovah's Witness, and I don't think that you would like to open a store that was Jehovah's Witness. I think that would be a niche market where you wouldn't get very many customers. You would much rather have a store that was in an open environment for people of all religions to come through and partake in your business. In a very simplified sense, the NFL players were doing almost the same thing. The viewers of the NFL are individual customers of the NFL network and the individual teams. While they are not paying money at many points to see the plays on TV, the people who go to the stadiums are definitely paying money, but many of the people who are watching on TV aren't paying any extra for it. The viewers are supporting the advertisers and supporting the advertising revenue that comes with it. For the players of the NFL to come out and expect everyone to sit and watch their kneeling protest is very similar to that cashier who would be trying to push a watchtower on every customer that came through his line. Not everybody shares the political belief, and you will alienate a lot of people if you try to push your belief on theirs, especially in a professional setting. Now, if you're on the street or you're going door to door and trying to pass out the watchtower, You are freely expressing your speech, and you should be protected by it. One of the most important things that you have to remember about the freedom of speech is the fact that the First Amendment protects your freedom to express yourself from the government. It does not protect you against private employers and entities. That's the reason that I can come out and criticize David Hogg on Twitter and just in general conversation. Twitter may shut me down because they are a private company and I'm not protected against private companies, but the government cannot come out and shut me up, put a gag on me, and put me in prison for things that I say against Hogg, against another person, or against the government itself. That's one of the most important things to remember about this whole situation. Now, with all of that being said, let's go back and talk again about Roseanne and her show and the world going forward surrounding it. ABC has already come out and said that they can no longer work with Roseanne Barr given her beliefs and her ability to be vocal about them. And that is fine. As I mentioned before, all transactions should be mutual and agreed upon by both parties. There have already been talks about Aunt Jackie having her own show on ABC. I don't know how well that'll go over. It doesn't really have the name recognition, even though Aunt Jackie was a central character to both runs of the program. But there are some other options that may go forward. Now, in the first couple of days that surrounded the conversation about Roseanne, there's already been a market demand to bring Barr's show back onto the air. It was wildly popular, especially among middle Americans. A lot of the same conversation surrounded ABC's other major conservative comedy, Last Man Standing, which was recently picked up and rebroadcast and slated for new episodes on the Fox network. I would not be surprised at all to find out that there are some TV executives and other entrepreneurs, especially over on Netflix and other independent non-cable entities, to slate new episodes for Roseanne and put it back on the air as soon as possible. I don't know how well that will work out. There are a couple of key factors that would surround that decision to go forward. ABC would have to sell the franchise as currently owned by the Disney Corporation. You would have to have all of the characters agree to come back on, given some of the public politics of many of these characters and their actors and actresses. I don't necessarily know how well that would go over, switching networks, and you would have to find a network that was willing to work with somebody who was known to have that kind of controversy surrounding her. But I'm sure that network executives and TV producers are intelligent enough to understand that on Tuesday nights in its time slot, Roseanne was the #1 rated comedy at the time that it was running. Even though my understanding of the show on both of its runs were that the writing and the themes were very left-leaning, the show did center around a highly conservative, by today's standards, middle America family, and that appealed to many middle-class middle Americans. There's a lot of advertising potential and possibility to go with this. It's difficult to say what will come out of this controversy. Disney may even bow to market pressure and put the show back on the air. I don't believe that's going to happen, but it is definitely a possibility and something that can't be discounted. I will come out and say I've read the tweet and the information surrounding it, and I believe that Disney was in the right to do so. As it was written, the tweet was very racist, and Roseanne Barr was a representative of the ABC company and its parent company, Disney. I would definitely not want my company to be perceived as racist, especially on today's market in today's political landscape. But I think that the heads of everybody who is involved in this controversy need to take a few seconds and cool down, as Miss Barrs did when she took some time and apologized for the fact that she made the tweet. And we can come back and discuss this at a later date. And in the worst case scenario, I think there are going to be a couple of TV networks that are chomping at the bit to come back and grab this thing up and try to make the best out of the situation. What are your thoughts on the Roseanne controversy, the tweet, and Disney's decision not to carry the program anymore? I always welcome thoughtful and productive discussion in the comment section below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at EdsBlog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. Thanks as always for watching this program and supporting this channel. And always remember, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Take care, everyone.